I see the record button come on.
Awesome. Did you figure it out, Becky?
So
I gave it to Royce.
Oh, thank you, Royce.
I don't know why I can't, but he can, but he's got it. Thank you. We got just
thank
what
you
about?
guys for taking the time to do this.
Oh no,
Thank
we're
you
happy
for
to.
coming. We appreciate having you here.
And we've got about 3 more minutes. It looks like there's still some people signing in, which is great.
Awesome. Just a couple more minutes and then we'll get started. All right, it is 10:15. We might have a few more people joining us, hopefully, as the webinar goes on, but I wanted to introduce myself. I emailed many of you, had the chance to meet several of you in person, but it's just really great to have you here today. I've been working at Cornerstone's Career Learning Center in Huron since the beginning of October, and then in distance education right around November is when I started. So once again, great to have all of you here. It's great to see your faces and great to have you here to learn a little bit more about distance. Hopefully we'll be able to answer some more of your questions that you might have, and we'll go from there. So distance learning has definitely become more of a common tool with the onset of COVID-19, and it's brought strengths and it's brought challenges. So I wanted to start off today by having us look at 3 quotes that pertain to learning, pertain to students. And if you could, in the chat box, as you read through these quotes, just write the first person or the first word that comes to your mind and how it relates to performing your jobs right now and also supporting our students. So this is the first one. I'll give you a few minutes to read through it. A few seconds, actually. So it says, education must prepare students to be independent, self-reliant human beings. But education at its best also must help students go beyond their private interests, gain a more integrative view of knowledge, and relate their learning to the realities of life. And it is by Ernest L. Boyer. So Becky wrote practical, John Anderson wrote andragogy. I'm guessing that's what that means. Thank you. Nikita wrote reach. Brenda beyond. Relevant, Mary wrote. Third time's the charm.
It's hard to type and to say, John.
The students that we normally had been serving in the classroom setting really have to learn to be self-motivated. They have to learn to face challenges like all of us are going through right now with the onset of social distancing. And they're really having to face a lot of real world challenges. I'm going to go on to our next quote. Royce added lifelong learning. All good descriptors of this quote. The next one is, no significant learning occurs without a significant relationship. You could use the chat box again, add to it, please, about what this quote means for you, for your students, and how we can reach them in distance learning. Mary and Becky added connection, John Anderson trust, commitment, Brenda. Relevant, Karen. One of the biggest challenges when we're not seeing our students face to face is, how can we make that connection with them? How can we still let them know that we care so that they know that we have their back? Openness, Jennifer said. The element of trust must be there. You know, it's definitely a challenge to reach students who maybe you've never met face to face and develop that connection and that relationship. But even though it's challenging, it's so vital for the teacher-student success. And the third quote that I'm going to share before we get into our material is fairly comical, I think, but really relevant to the situation that we are in right now. If it wasn't for distance education right now, we'd be in big trouble, by Robert Sandel. And this quote isn't necessarily just focusing on the distance learning program, but also just how all of the educators in adult education have been forced to think outside of the box and find ways to adapt their teaching so that we can still serve our students' needs remotely, thinking about how we can best support them during such a challenging time that is fraught with such stress and such uncertainty. And distance education is just very relevant right now. It matters. Now, as those three quotes have kind of led up to, the need for distance learning, not only in South Dakota, but around the world, has skyrocketed since COVID-19 began. As of right now, in South Dakota's distance learning program, we have just over 118 students that we are serving. 57 of those students are using GED Academy. 43 of the students are using Khan Academy and ReadWorks. The reason I put Khan Academy and ReadWorks together is because many of the students who use one use the other as well. And we have 18 students who are currently using Burlington English. Statewide, since March 9th, we've had over 82 new student referrals, and that has definitely caused an increase in the usage of our 4 platforms that we will be talking about shortly, and our hours, reportable hours during the month of April. So far, we have reached 168.5 hours in April 2020. 93.7 of those were through GED Academy. 35.7 were with Khan Academy, and 12 were on ReadWorks, 27.1 were on Burlington English. I wanted to include these statistics just to give everyone an idea of what the usage is per program, to find where many of their students might be utilizing distance. I also want to mention that if you have any questions that pop up during our session, to please send them to the chat box, and Becky will alert me to them. And we will also have a time at the end for question and answers. Some factors that, I think I might have skipped ahead too far, 1 second. Okay. Try to find my back button. There. Some factors that teachers would be best to consider before referring students to the distance program. They may seem like no-brainers, but they really do require us to think about what our students' needs are and what abilities they have to access technology. Students not only need to have internet access, but it is important that they also have devices to access the study platforms. Students might qualify for income-based, discounted, or free internet with Midco's Lifeline Assistance Program, and I included that link right after that bullet point, just so that everyone's aware of it. You may already be, but our students might not be. It's also important to take a look at our students' reading level. Students who are reading at NRS levels 1 to 2, which would equate to below 500 on the TABE, might struggle to comprehend the material presented without dedicated teacher support. It's going to depend on the individual student. We don't want to turn anyone away, but we also want to be realistic about where they're at and how successful they might be with the program. Students who are reading at or above NRS level 3 are most likely to be successful, but there's always going to be a situation where students can be successful if we give them the right tools and supports. Students will also need to have basic digital skills. We have the students complete the North Star Digital Literacy Assessments before they get their study accounts, so that we know where they are at with accessing the content. It is also very vital that students have a program that serves their needs. One way to find out if a program will be good for a certain student is what their educational goals are. And this slide was adapted from the South Dakota Blended Learning Handbook that Royce had created. We currently offer 4 study platforms in addition to the North Star digital assessments. GED Academy is what we have been using for quite a while, and we recently added Khan Academy. Again, it was used in the past, but with the high demand for distance learning, we added Khan Academy, Burlington English, and also ReadWorks. Now I'm going to give you a glimpse of the details about each of those study platforms, and we will also be giving you a look at what each of those platforms looks like from the student's screen.
Hey, Andrew, before you move ahead.
GED Academy by Essential Education offers
Andrew?
engaging content in all 4 subjects and is geared specifically towards GED prep. GED Academy uses a virtual coach named Leonard who instructs students in the areas they need the most support in through videos, guided practice, and assessments. Students can take built-in practice tests that help determine their skill mastery and identify areas they need to focus on more. And here is a look at the screen that students will see shortly after signing into GED Academy. They will have the option to select studying at school if they select yes, or studying at home if they select no. This is important because I know that several programs do offer computer lab time for students who are in distance and also in regular class to work on GED Academy. Here is a view of what a student might see if they were working on math lessons. It shows what the unit they are looking at is, so Introduction to Algebra. It describes the first lesson and gives them an estimate about the time that it might take to complete it. You see on the right-hand side of the screen that there is a progress bar, tells them where they are at, what they need to do to get to that next level. This is also where students will find information about taking a practice test, and after they have taken a practice test, their score will show up here. It also gives a tracker for student study time. They can set a daily goal to work towards. That is found in the bottom right-hand side of the screen. And it shows mastery for each of the units. And after a student has completed a unit successfully, there will be a green check mark, and it will also tell them the percentage that they got correct on that unit. Here is a picture of, or a screenshot of Leonard, who is the virtual coach in GED Academy. And the students would be able to press play, learn about whatever the topic is, and then click next to do some guided practice. All right, next we are going to look at Khan Academy. Khan Academy has app support for mobile devices, and that is a great feature because then students who do not have computers or laptops can use it still. One drawback to GED Academy is that GED Academy is only compatible at this time on computers or laptops. It is very difficult to use on a mobile device. Khan Academy is highly customizable to individual student needs because the teacher or myself can go in and assign specific lessons based on maybe our past history working with that student or based on where we know they need to focus from their TABE results. It is also really cool that Khan Academy offers support for learning in the language of a student's choice. That works great for many of our ESL students who are also working towards earning their GED. And I will show you a little bit more about that on one of the next slides as to how to find or instruct our students on changing their preferred language. Students select lesson modules to watch videos, complete lesson modules, and perform assessments as assigned. Khan Academy allows the students to go at their own pace so that they can do as little or as much as they want in a given time. Here is a look at Khan Academy. It shows the different units that a student might be working on, and it also shows where they can select to play videos, complete exercises, or move on to more lessons or a quiz. Here is an example of a video that students would play. There would be a teacher who has pre-recorded this video and walks the students through each of the math problems. As I mentioned earlier, Khan Academy has language support. Students can select the language of their choice, and in this instance, the student could learn in Burmese. They also can learn in any of the other languages, pretty much any language that they would like to learn. The best way to select the language of the student's choice is when you go to www.khanacademy.org. You can scroll all the way down to the footer, and you will be able to select if you want English or whatever other language you want to learn in. Our third program that we offer in distance education is Burlington English. Burlington English is an excellent tool to help students increase their English language acquisition, practice conversational skills, and it also offers career and workplace language that students might need for advancing their not only educational opportunities, but also workplace opportunities. Students can use Burlington English by signing into their accounts individually, or they can deliver, or teachers can deliver the content remotely via screen share that GoToMeeting or Zoom or any of the other web chat platforms people might use in this day and age. It's a really great option. I know that myself and several of my colleagues with Cornerstones have been using the Burlington English content through their in-class lessons for our afternoon and evening English classes. And that has seemingly been working very well. One way that Burlington English referrals will work differently is that it is important that when sending someone over to receive a Burlington English account, that you include the student's name, their gender, their test score, and also the language that they prefer to learn, or the language that they also speak other than English.
Andrew?
Because Burlington English can gear the specific lesson practices and guided practice where they record themselves to that specific language and dialect, which is awesome.
I didn't want to even.
Andrew?
Here's a quick look at what the test scores allow us to do with selecting classes in Burlington English. So we have beginning ESL literacy, low beginning ESL, high beginning, low intermediate, high intermediate, and advanced ESL, as well as the Burlington Core, which is a newer offering from Burlington English. All right, here's a
Andrew?
glimpse of what students might see in an in-class lesson where students would press play, hear the word being spoken, and then they would practice recording themselves saying the word. Due to this interactive nature of Burlington English, it is very important that students would have access to a headset with a microphone. When we do Burlington English 1 day a week in our afternoon classes at Cornerstones, the students all have earphones or headsets on with microphones so that they can do the interactive piece. Here's another example of a lesson in Burlington English. There are a lot of examples that students can practice with, and the format is typically an introduction or get ready, a presentation, and then student practice and a review. Sometimes students are able to play a review game, so that can make it kind of interesting for them, aside from just the regular practice. And our fourth program that we are offering is ReadWorks. With ReadWorks, we have access to a high amount of content, nonfiction, fiction, poems, that can be geared toward a student's reading level and the student's interests. I try to include reading material for students that they might see on whatever test preparation they're wanting to go towards, but also I try as much as I can to learn a little bit about what the students' interests are, so to maybe add a little bit of topics that they might be interested in to help keep them going with it. One great option for both ReadWorks and Burlington English is that they are not only mobile browser friendly, but they also have apps for iOS and Android devices. Students can assess comprehension through question sets and vocabulary building exercises. ReadWorks also has the option for students to have a certain passage read to them. They can press play, and that can be useful for students who maybe might struggle with how to say a certain word that they haven't seen before. So that is also a cool feature that ReadWorks has. Here is an example of ReadWorks from the administrator's perspective. On the administrator side, it does show that it is a certain grade level. It shows the amount of words, but when the student gets assigned a certain passage, it doesn't say what the grade level is, so that helps so that they don't see that and think, oh, I'm only reading at this level. It helps make it a non-judgmental experience for them, which is good. Let's see. Here's an example of what a student might see. As I mentioned earlier, the students can have the passage read to them first before they go in and read it themselves. A lot of the articles have graphics built in. Whoops. And we've seen this on a phone screen. I know Royce in one of our staff meetings had shown it, and it is a decent experience to read. Just to recap some of the benefits of distance learning, we have dedicated support for students, teachers, and providers. I'm always available Monday through Thursday and on some Fridays to be reached via email. I try to give students frequent goal setting activities to help encourage their intrinsic motivation and to help them track their progress. We've been doing monthly virtual study challenges where students work together with students across the state to reach a certain goal. And I'll give an example of those in the next slide. And many of you have probably received that content from me already, but we'll show you that anyways. Students can stay on track during COVID-19, and students will also have the flexibility to supplement in-class learning once their regular classes resume. Students in many programs are already using GED Academy, their adult education site, and the other programs are also available to have that usage. Here are the monthly challenges that we have done most recently. We did a challenge where students studied across the state of South Dakota from Sioux Falls to Mount Rushmore. For this challenge, every 2.25 hours that the students across the state studied equaled 75 miles. Then we also had a virtual hike to Black Elk Peak, formerly Harney Peak in the Black Hills, and the students exceeded the goal during the month of March at 105% complete. And most recently, we studied to the top of the world. We originally had the goal of trying to reach a farm silo, and then we kept expanding, going toward the tallest building in the world, which is located in Dubai. The students were able to study the equivalent of 3,122 feet, and we achieved our goal for the month of April. Some helpful resources for both students and teachers to keep in mind. I mentioned it earlier that Midco has a program called Lifeline where students or staff may qualify for internet and phone service, either free or discounted based on their income. So this link is available. I can send out the link to everyone or the PowerPoint to everyone when we are finished. We have some helpful tips and tutorials for accessing student accounts on our Cornerstones Career Learning Center Facebook, or not Facebook, YouTube channel. And also we have links to those on our Cornerstones distance page. The tutorial videos are thanks to Nikita Maddox and Debbie Skokin. They did an awesome job, and very much thanks goes to them for that. We also have a distance learning handbook that Royce created that is accessible via this link. And you know, it's always a good reference if you think you have a question but you're not sure of how to answer it. I'm always available to help serve you and your students, but it might also be a good reference for you to take a look at that handbook too. All right, at this time, I know many of you may have been submitting questions via our chat, but at this time I'd like to open it up to any questions that all of you have, or just any way that I can help serve you and your students better.
Andrew, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Becky.
Yeah, I think everybody
All right,
except Andrew
so
can
looking at the chat,
somehow.
Mary asked, does ReadWorks include alphabetics instruction? That is something I am not sure of, but I can get back to you later today on, Mary. That is a good question. All right. John said that the challenges seem fun. John asked, Yeah, I cannot hear you at this time, Becky. John asked if the platforms are using the clock time model. All of the platforms other than ReadWorks are using the clock time model. ReadWorks is the only one that is not. They do not have the built-in time feature. Let's see. Yeah, I'm not able to hear you right now, Becky. I'm wondering maybe I need to try unmuting people. I apologize for that. Thank you, Becky, for adding to that.
You're welcome. Can you hear me now? No. Okay.
I've learned the hard way that if I don't allow my microphone privacy settings before I enter a platform, I cannot access audio throughout the duration.
Are there any other support-related questions? I see Mary added one.
I just wanted to make sure everybody knew that
Mary
Vast
asked
and
about
Golden,
the headset and mic. I think the biggest factor for the headset and mic would be if they're working, let's say, in a computer lab and there are other students who are working, to not only be able to better record their voice feature instead of all of the background noise. That would probably be the biggest factor. I know with my program on my computer with Burlington English, I could probably record without having a headset. It's possible that my speakers might be muted, but let me check.
Thanks, Stephanie. I saw your response to Khan Academy and the foreign language options. I appreciate that.
Very strange.
yeah, the students really seem to like that because they can hear it in English and they appreciate that.
Was it primarily in Spanish your students were accessing or different languages?
I actually, the feedback was from my Japanese learner.
Okay, cool.
I know some of the videos, the Khan Academy videos, have dedicated translations that are actually done, by a native speaker of that language, and so it gives you those options, and then there's some
At this
auto
point, we haven't heard any
options.
or seen any student testimonials about the user friendliness or accuracy with Khan Academy's language options, but that is something we can definitely look into.
Royce, were those dedicatedly translated videos designated some way that you could discern one from another?
Well, yeah, because on YouTube, when you watch any YouTube video, honestly, because they're all through YouTube,
Stephanie has said that she has used the language friendly option. That's good to hear, Stephanie.
there'll be an auto translate option for all the languages it doesn't have, and then any language they list is one that someone has made a separate dedicated audio in that language. Another volunteer.
Really? Well, that's just some general digital literacy of which I'm unaware. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, they have a tendency, of course, to be in higher prestige languages because those are the people that have the volunteer time. But luckily, Spanish is often one of those.
Okay, I told Andrew to try signing out and signing back in because I want him to be able to hear some of the conversation that you all are having. One question, and maybe I want to wait until he gets back in, but one question I had that I wanted to bring up, especially since John Anderson is on the line, is how what we can do if we have new students who want to enter our programs at this time who maybe do not have assessment results. And John, I know we addressed this yesterday, 2 days ago, someday this week on our directors and coordinators call. They're all blending together for me this week for some reason. But I thought it might bear mentioning. Andrew's coming back online. Andrew, can you hear us now?
Yes, I can finally hear
Awesome.
you. Thank you for that.
Okay. I was just asking a question that I had during your presentation that I wanted John Anderson to speak to a little bit, which is what if we have new students who don't have assessment results at this time who we want to enter into the distance program? And I was going to ask John to speak to that a bit.
That would be great.
Sure. The feds in the memo, there have been 2 FAQ memoranda recently published, allow us to make changes to our assessment policy without first requesting approval. So I want to afford as much flexibility as programs can handle or require. If you have student referrals who can't get the pretest, obviously, we have the ability, and we can serve them, and you can use your own expertise and preferences to make that placement. We can use a TABE locator. I suppose you could use North Star in combination with an interview of their your previous educational history. Maybe you have some informal formative assessments like Nikita uses with alphabetics. I don't know, Becky Starr 2.0, whatever you might need to. I think there's some integrated pre-tests within GED Academy, whatever you need to get the most appropriate placement possible and to keep that student engaged or get that student aligned with his or her immediate goals. Am I answering your question?
John, may I ask
Yes.
one more?
Please.
So I've had a referral, and it just came today, and it actually came through North Dakota's workforce committee. They have an injured person in South Dakota in Interior, and that makes it difficult to get some assessments to them. Can we use a TABE 9D possibly with them just to kind of expedite it, because at least we would know and understand where that student's at?
Did you say TABE 9 or 10?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Now, of course, we're going to have to track students some way, either on a spreadsheet or indicate within LACIS. And we're going to have a LACIS webinar very early June. Maybe we need to address this prior to that, but the feds are ultimately saying this program year's outcomes and performance aren't going to affect sanctions. And to me, we've always prioritized high quality instruction and appropriate services over performance gains and certain metrics. So with that, can we eventually get a pretest on file? That would be ideal. Eventually, whether that's remote proxy. Now, will it necessarily be accurate and capture all those gains? Certainly not. I think the end goal would be ultimately to have them achieve or earn their GED credential sometime this program year, more realistically next program year, and then we would have, the possibility. And admittedly, Octave said they're working on how we can possibly thread that needle of keeping students engaged while still meeting NRS pre-post test outcomes. So do what you need to do, and we'll worry about the NRS and data tracking later. Just do your best to keep a spreadsheet on the side or indicate it within LACIS via comments or something.
Well,
And
John,
just so you know, this particular student won't be doing a GED. This student has a high school diploma, but she knows the student is basic skills deficient.
yeah.
Like lower than 9th grade.
Well, and the employment then outcome was, you said they're with North Dakota. I mean, at some point, hopefully we could capture some outcome, whether that's median earning, employment, second quarter, fourth quarter, et cetera. Becky, did you have a comment or maybe share what you're doing?
I was just going to share, I think that in lieu of a Best Plus assessment at this point too, if you are doing that online intake form, which we still do need an intake form in order to serve those students, correct?
So I was on a Octave call and I broached that because the Lutheran Social Services, through their Department of State funding with refugee resettlement, has a temporary workaround or circumvention so that the teacher is reading the release of information statement and then getting affirmation from the student and signing that release of information his or herself. The teacher is signing and dating that. And so we're getting sort of a virtual signature on that for enrollment. But yeah, we absolutely need to be getting the paperwork done for that enrollment. And that,
Yeah, and
go ahead.
And then in lieu of that Best Plus assessment, I know our teachers often say that if completing that intake paperwork or having an initial conversation with a student, they can pretty much tell what class that student's going to be placed in terms of their language abilities. So, I think if you have that ballpark level in mind for a student that you're wanting to put into Burlington English, that Andrew can certainly work with you to determine where they would fall on that scale score range so that we can put that into Burlington English and get that student in as well.
That's a terrific testament to our teachers' experience and expertise, having the ability through a conversation enrollment to get a gauge of where they are in terms of oracy and oral competency.
We've been talking a lot about professional judgment in our staff calls over these last few weeks. Andrew, just to catch you up a little bit on some things that you could not hear, both Steph and Royce chimed in on the Khan Academy language question and affirmed that it is pretty good, according to many of our students who have used that feature in Khan Academy. And one question that John Anderson had from very early on that I want you to speak to, Andrew, is to what extent we are using North Star assessments and materials, and what are your impressions of those North Star assessments and materials?
Well, I feel that it's definitely challenging for some of our students to navigate. It's a challenge from the outlook of it not being a good experience on a smartphone or even on a tablet. So it makes it more difficult for students who maybe only have a laptop or a computer. Some of the questions are very helpful, but others, for example, like certain function keyboard tricks that are on there, not as much. I think it's good to see where a student is at with their digital skills, but some of it is more difficult to use as a gauge in that sense.
John, I would just mention I have been looking at, and I think Royce has as well, been looking at some of the instructional materials that North Star has been putting out in connection with their assessment tool. And I'm pretty excited about some of those instructional materials. Once we can have our students back in our classrooms again, I think those instructional materials could really help with some of our students who have lower digital skills to help them build those skills up. And I think, and Royce, you can maybe speak to this too, because you've been working with it for a long time. I think that North Star has its issues, but it's still maybe the best and most accessible program that we have in order to get a sense of a student's digital literacy skills in terms of will they be able to navigate the distance programs. So. One more thing that I
looking
just want. Oh, go ahead, John.
Well, when Andrew, you showed us the statistics, I think the recent figures on usage, ReadWorks was pretty limited, but do you think it adequately fulfills a need or fills a gap? Not that I'm suggesting we have leadership money burning a hole in the proverbial pocket. In maybe we need to look with retrospect in a few months, but are there any other digital literacy pieces? I know Cornerstones had developed curricula and modules, and sometimes student interest or student abilities don't necessarily align. So I guess what I'm asking, not only you, Andrew, but the entire list of attendees, do we feel that these resources, given what's potentially available out there, are serving the need to the best extent we can on this budget?
John, it's interesting you say that. Royce and Nikita and I actually had a meeting this morning to talk about some additional programming that we think might be necessary for some of our quote unquote fast track students. Students who are either very close to being final test ready or who are final test ready, who now are not able to go into a testing center and take those final GEDs, but who we want to keep engaged. And those students who maybe have some skill gaps. And we were reviewing some of the materials that Royce had produced for the distance program in the past, and talking about, are they just ready to use the way they are? We were talking about some things to add. And actually, I think in answer to a couple of Mary's queries about ReadWorks, Nikita and I were really looking at some of the reading classes that had been developed in the past that we think could be modified or extended to make them very much more STAR oriented, where we're looking at strategy, instruction for comprehension, and not just comprehension questions, so that we're adding pieces in to some of those ReadWorks materials for our own use, and to supplement some of the things that students are doing with some of the materials that we already have available. So Royce is actually going to take the lead in teaching a synchronous class for some fast track math students that we've got within Cornerstone's student body at this time. But we're also thinking in terms of maybe students whose reading and language skills are high, but they need some work on extended response. Royce has an essay class that's out there and available that addresses a lot of those skills needed to write that extended response. And then looking at what can we do also around things like scientific method, some of the things that are harder to learn in a book. So we are having some of those conversations. I'm pretty excited about some of the things that we're talking about. And, as always, they take time and effort, which always equates back to money for time and effort. But those are some things that I think that we've not found a lot of pre-done stuff that can just address that all on its own. Royce included in his essay course the GED extended response videos as one of the resources students could use, but then going through and giving them some additional practice as well.
I just wanted to say, we're really looking at building some Google Classrooms that have menu bars or menu choices. And I'm pretty excited about maybe that, but that does take time and it takes a lot of development. And it's not something I want to roll out to students when they can't be there to see it with me to begin. And I just don't know that it's really the greatest time to introduce 10 million new things when we're already expecting them to do so many new things. So the way I kind of look at this is I am going to kind of stick with what we have and stick with what we've got working for now, and then develop something out so that should this ever roll around, we're a little more mobile and ready to roll.
We're at Steph, actually the things that we're working on right now, we're working on for the next shutdown. honestly. I mean, realistically,
Us as
we're working on
well.
this for next winter. I mean, we're just planning that this is going to happen again next
Yeah.
winter, sadly.
Well, and the
I will
Department of
tell
Health
you,
does look for that in flu season next year, so I think we're smart to plan for that.
I will tell you that I watched webinars on ReadWorks because I wasn't familiar with it, and I teach English language classes. And my students were wanting more to do because they're at home. So I signed them all up and gave them the option of doing ReadWorks as well. And I walked them through it on a Zoom, how to get in, what to work on. And they seemed really excited about doing it. And when I went back in and looked, I actually had one that did go in and do some work. So that's a good thing. And I will just keep bringing it up on our Zoom classes as extra for them to do if they want to, because there are question and answer for comprehension. So that's something I'm always looking for the English language portion as well. I just don't want them to lose their English that they have gained during this break. And it was pretty easy to navigate. So I incorporated that as well.
If you go to readworks.org, their landing page immediately shows you their webinar series, and those are some of really the best webinar trainings that I have been part of throughout the last few weeks when everything has been thrown at us as a webinar training. Very practical, very useful, very easy to get started in a digital format if you have not yet done that. So I would highly recommend those ReadWorks videos.
Yes, I just set up I watched the video twice actually and set up my class with her playing, stopping, setting it up, going back and adding, and it was probably some of the best that I've seen.
Thanks for sharing, Brenda. I don't want to pivot too much, but I'm curious, given all the attendees, how do you think digital literacy, distance education might intersect with some of the family literacy initiatives, Family First, and over at the state library, they have book flicks, and I, and I guess I'm all over the place here, but to Steph's point earlier about not throwing too much at our learners who are trying to homeschool their kids, I think that's so important to remember. And I think of our English language IDP, how we really reinforce if we're introducing new content, use a familiar activity. If we're introducing a new activity, use familiar content. And so some of these things better lend themselves to a hybrid where we can do in-class face-to-face first, and then transition to remote learning. But family literacy, and do you anticipate a resurgence of its prominence in the next program year?
I don't see how it can't, because we are all spending a lot of time teaching our students how to teach their children.
Yes, and when you talk about Family First, John, I had thousands and thousands of dollars worth of sessions set up that we were unable to do because of COVID. And I toy with doing webinars with those. And quite honestly, I don't see the audience there, especially after we've sat for months and months and on webinar after webinar. There's just something that it loses by not having that one-on-one. I can bop over to your table and look at your paper, and I also got pricing for doing the online, and that just, they increased their pricing for less product. So I really want to see us, and this is maybe not the time, but I want to see us do more of the going into the communities and doing the Bring Your A game or the digital literacy or financial literacy. I've just had such a great response to the program that I really want to see that amped up when we come off this. I have people waiting for us to come off this to go in. So that's just my 25 cents worth.
And I think Mary's question is a good one, John. Is DLR leadership willing to maybe direct some of those Family First dollars toward our efforts right now to support family literacy with our students and our programs? And I think that's a really valid question, Mary. I appreciate that suggestion. One other thing I wanted to note is Karen Hofer and I had a couple of conversations about ReadWorks classes as a family literacy activity, setting up a ReadWorks class where the parent and the children in the home are the class. She's got a couple of her GED students are fairly low level. They're English language learners who transitioned into GED classes. Their work is not that much higher level than their middle elementary age children that they're helping with their schoolwork. And I said, you know, ReadWorks seems like a really kind of a smart thing to do so that she feels like she's working with her children, but she's also getting a lot of her literacy skills at the same time. And it's something that they can do collaboratively. It's not something she has to do on top of helping the children with their schoolwork.
And Khan Academy, Becky, don't forget that too for
Yes.
the other subjects is a good help.
Yes. So just one other way we can promote that family engagement without hopefully stressing our students out too much. I agree with Steph though. We can only ask everybody, students, teachers, admin, everybody to do as much as they can do right now. And when you start to get to that point where you feel like the water's up to your chin, take a step back.
Well, I appreciate everyone sharing their candid perspectives. Andrew, terrific job in providing the overview and a reminder of all these tools and resources, and excellent engagement. I learned a lot. So
Thank you.
So I can bid you all a terrific day, spring day, as everyone was pining about going outside. Please stay well and take care.
Thank you, John, and thank you everyone for attending. Really appreciate all you do.
Thanks, Andrew.
Thanks all.
Thank you, Andrew.
Andrew, I want to give you a personal thank you because you've been awesome to work with and above and beyond the call of duty. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. That means a lot.